Amen. Thank you for leading us in worship. Thank you for the praises as we gather together. It's good to be back with you. I'm struggling a little bit in the throat too this morning. I don't know what the deal is, but Lord will take care of that. We've been talking about living in the light. This is our third message in the series of 5, Lord willing. James says, don't make promises about we'll go to a city and spend that much time, make some money, and do this. He said, if the Lord wills, you will do that. So if the Lord wills, we will have 2 more in the series. But in the meantime, today we're talking about shining truth. And I deliberately didn't say the shining truth. That's part of it. But shining is an adjective in that case, and it's a verb in the other case when we are to be shining truth. And we want to cover both of those. So we're just going with shining truth. And besides, that also means all the sermons begin with the letter S. I don't know if you've noticed that so far. But if I'd have put the in there, that'd kind of break it. But it goes both ways. And we're going to look at that today. We've been talking about it. In our first message, we talked about making the choice to come out of the darkness into the glorious light of God. And we had a choice to make to either be in the shadows or come into the shining light. But also when you're in the shining light, you have to make a choice. Are you going to try to just kind of lounge in the shade, or are you going to really get out there and live in the light? So we talked about those choices to make. There's only one good choice, and that's to live in the shining light. Last week we talked about what that light really means, and it's the essence and character of God and who He is, and the fact that He puts that inside of us as believers, and we are to live in that light. This is not about a ticket to heaven. I confessed my sins and Jesus gave me eternal life, and so I'm going to heaven someday. That's what the average Christian thinks about and believes, and that's just not Bible. This is about the Holy Spirit of the one and only holy God comes into my life to change me and make me more and more like Him, and I'm supposed to live that way. And those are the verses we've looked at. But I think we still need to define it, and that's what we want to do today, and realize that it isn't just some philosophical concept about, okay, I left the darkness, I've come into the light, goody for me, and I get to go to heaven someday. There is a definition to what that light really is, and we want to look at that and see what a difference that makes. And so that's the shining truth. In a world that desperately needs to understand truth, they need to know what that is, that there really is one, first of all. I've been around a while, okay? I'm 68 years old, almost 69, and so I lived through the 60s and survived that, and now I'm surviving the 2020s here, and I don't think I've ever seen as much confusion about some simple things like God and truth and honesty and integrity that comes from that. And it's because there's been such a great push in the last 25 years or so to throw out the idea of truth. And the way they've done that, the way the devil has accomplished that, is to disguise it. Because to just come along and say, hey, there's no such thing as truth, we rejected that a long time ago. So what he's done is he's got people convinced that everybody gets their own truth, that we've all got our truth. That is, to me, absurd, and even just, if it wasn't so sad, it would be laughable. You can't possibly have that many truths because they would contradict each other, and if they're contradictory, one or both of them have to be wrong. It can't be true and yours be true, and they both be totally opposite. If my truth is that everything you are and everything you have and everything you've worked for, all of it is really for my benefit, then I get your stuff. You keep working and make your money, but it's for me because that's my truth. And you say, now wait a minute, my truth is I'm doing that for me and my family, and we're glad to share it, and we'll give some to the church and we'll help people out, but it's ours to do with. And that's my truth. Well, one of those or both of those is wrong. Actually, they're both kind of wrong. It's God's money and it's God's talent and it's God's ability, and He'll help you to figure out what to do with it, but our truths are not there. Your truth may be that you don't like the idea of gravity, so you've just thrown that out. And you are a bird, and so, or like a bird, and you could climb up on top of this church building and jump off and flap your arms, and you could just fly all over Nokomis or wherever you want to go, and that's your truth. You're a bird. Well, jump off of that, baby, and flap all you want, but the truth is there's this little thing called gravity that says what goes up must come down, and you're coming down. That's the truth, and the world knows that. And yet they stand and tell you everybody gets their own truth, and you can do whatever you want without any consequences because that's your truth. So the devil has told that, and people are buying into it because what they see in that is, I get to do what I want. And you can't judge me for that, and I shouldn't have to pay any consequences for that. That's what they really mean when they say, I get my own truth, and you get your own truth. And everybody's got their own truth. And you just need to live up to your truth. No, you will die up to your truth. Because there is a truth. And we need to know that there is one. And then what is it? And so that's what we're looking at today. So I've got some verses for you. And we're going to start in Matthew 5 where Jesus was preaching his Sermon on the Mount. And talked about this light. And we've been talking about light. And you said, well, now you're talking about truth. I want you to see it's the same thing. The light of God is truth. And Jesus even tells us that. So here's what he says, because we've already read before that Jesus is the light. You know that. Jesus is the light of the world. But watch what he says here. Talking to the crowd, therefore talking to us. He says in Matthew 5:14, you are the light of the world. A city that is set on a hill cannot be hidden, nor do they light a lamp and put it under a basket. We used to sing that song, remember, as little kids? I don't know if you still do that or not, but hide it under a bushel. No, I'm going to let it shine. That's what he's talking about. That's where it came from. You don't put it under a basket, but on a lampstand, and it gives light to all who are in the house. Let your light so shine before men that they may see your good works and glorify your Father in heaven. So what he's saying here is that Jesus is the light. God is the light. We already read that. We're going to read it again in a moment, that there's no darkness there. It's pure light. He puts that light in us and says, now you're in the world. Shine your light, which is actually the light of Jesus. Shine it out there so people will see that they can come out of the darkness into the light. So he says, do that. In John 14:6, Jesus said this, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. He said, well, now, wait a minute, what are we doing? What I'm trying to show you is that his light is the truth. Who he is the truth. And so you can almost interchange the two in these passages. So now he's saying, I'm the truth. There's no way to get to God but through me. Now, these verses we read last week, but I want to see this connection. So in 1 John 1:5-6, I'll remind you, when John wrote, says, this is the message which we have heard from him, and declare to you that God is light, and in him is no darkness at all. So notice that. God is light, no darkness in God. But watch what he does here. He says, if we say that we have fellowship with him and walk in darkness, we lie, and then what? And do not practice the truth. He's just shifted from God is light. And if you don't live like God says so, you're not practicing what? Light? Yeah, but he calls it the truth. You're not practicing the truth. God is absolute truth. Because he's God, it makes sense. If there's no God, then none of it makes sense. But if there's a God, then it makes sense that we've got to honor that, and he's got the right ideas. He's the God. And if we don't, so what we're saying is, if you just think you've got your ticket to heaven, if you just think you're a Christian and you're going to go someday because you've kind of trusted Jesus or you've said so, but you live any way you want, you're a liar. And you're not going, because you can't go unless you go through Jesus, and his way is truth. So all these people all over the world that are telling you there are other ways to heaven, that there are other ways to get there, that you can have your own truth and it's going to be okay in the end, they're lying. They may not think so. They may think they're telling you the truth, but there has to be a standard. There has to be. There's no logical way that you can say, no, there's no standard. Everybody gets to have their truth. That can't possibly be true. It's just the same way as people that tell you that there is no absolute truth. That statement's absurd. Because think about it. That's an absolute truth statement. There is no absolute truth. I've had people over the years that'll say, I don't think that we could actually, if there's a God, I don't think we could know that. Because I don't think we can know anything for sure. And my answer to that has always been, are you sure about that? They can't be sure about it. If they're sure about it, then they've lied themselves. So, well, no, I'm not sure. Then in that doubt that you have, that you can't possibly know God, I'm telling you, you can, because God says so. And if they argue with that, they're arguing with themselves. You can step away because they're arguing. It's the same way. There is no absolute truth. That's making an absolute statement which can't be true then. I mean, it's like there's no absolute truth, and that's the truth. See, it doesn't make sense. The world's crazy, I guess is what I'm saying. They're nuts. They've gone nuts. The devil has just led them into all kinds of things that can't possibly be true, and why not? The Bible tells us he's the father of lies. That's what he does. He doesn't like to just come out and say things like, you don't want to be with God. You don't want to go to heaven. You want to die. You don't want to do that stuff. He has to package it up and make it look better. So instead of saying believe a lie, he just says you can have your own truth. It's the same result. And Jesus is identifying that this light that God is, the essence of God, the very character of God is absolute truth. And we have to learn that and put that into practice. And so in Romans chapter 1, here's what man has done instead. And you have to make your choice. And beginning in verse 18, he says, for the wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and unrighteousness of men who suppress the truth in unrighteousness. Because what may be known of God is manifest in them, for God has shown it to them. For since the creation of the world, his invisible attributes are clearly seen, being understood by the things that are made, even his eternal power and Godhead, so that they are without excuse. I'll pause there for a moment. What he's just said is, since the beginning of creation, he has made himself known, and it's been clear. And everybody could understand at least that there is this God. There is a God who's behind all of this, and he's even let us know about his attributes. Because look around, and if you just look at nature, I see it all the time, and people posting pictures on Facebook and different stuff, and it's like, look at that beauty, look at the majesty of those mountains, look at the power in those waves of the ocean. It just depends on the picture. Everybody sees that and could know and admit what a mighty, mighty God we serve. Instead, a lot of people are like, wow, isn't Mother Nature something? Didn't it just work out pretty neat how everything just blew up one day and worked out to look like this and act like this and all? Isn't that something? Because here's what they did. This is why they're without excuse. Verse 21. Because although they knew God, they did not glorify him as God, nor were thankful, but became futile in their thoughts, and their foolish hearts were darkened. Professing to be wise, they became fools, and changed the glory of the incorruptible God into an image made like corruptible man, and birds and four-footed animals and creeping things. Therefore, God also gave them up to uncleanness in the lust of their hearts, to dishonor their bodies among themselves, who exchanged the truth of God for the lie, and worshiped and served the creature rather than the Creator, who is blessed forever. Amen. That's what the world has done. And if we're not careful, even as Christians, we can kind of do the same thing. When we listen to their lies and try to just go along to get along, peace at all costs. I've heard that for years, especially in the ministry. Every time there's a little struggle in the church, and a lot of people will say, well, let's just try to get along, but we should try peace at all costs. Not if the cost is the truth. You can't. You can't give up the truth. Now, whose truth? See, we even struggle with that in our churches and in our Christianity. Is it the truth that you're supposed to sing hymns, or is it the truth that you can sing contemporary Christian music? Or is the truth that you're supposed to do both? I don't think any of that's the truth. The truth is you're supposed to worship God. And I was in the music ministry for my first 12 years, and then I've stayed in that off and on throughout the last 40, 35 years and continued to lead worship and all that. I struggle with people who say, I just can't worship to the contemporary music. You've got a problem, because it's not about music, it's about God. And you ought to be able to worship. I struggle with people who say, I just can't worship with the old hymns. You've got a problem, because it's supposed to be about God and your heart toward God. Now, some things make it easier. Padded pews make it easier. But I can worship with an old bench, or I can worship standing up, or I can worship sitting down, or I can worship on a stool or whatever. It's easier on a padded pew, especially if the preacher gets a little long-winded, because, it just hurts. It hurts sometimes the way you feel. You don't feel very well, and it's tougher to worship when you don't feel good. You can stub your big toe right before church, and if it's hurting bad, it's almost tough to sing the songs. So I get it that some things are easier, but here's what I've figured out over the last few years, even more so. We don't give it enough press, I think, and it needs to be negative press. Comfort zone. Whatever your comfort zone is, that's what you love, and that's where you want to dwell, and that's where you want to stay, and it's tough to come out of it. And it doesn't matter if you're talking about music styles, church building styles, seating styles, clothing styles, anything. We love whatever we're already comfortable with, and we hate to change that. And we will fight tooth and nail to change that sometimes. The problem is sometimes our comfort zone and the truth don't match up, and we need to change to the truth, because that's what it's about. So we better get to the outline here, or we'll never get her done. But so that's my first point, is there is a truth, and it's God's truth. That's where we have to start. Jesus said, I am the truth. And so when you say you walk in light and not darkness, and you have fellowship with me, if you say so, you better be practicing his truth. Not mine, not yours, not the Baptist truth, not the Catholic truth, not the atheist truth, not the Buddhist truth. God's truth. Because he's God. And he started it all. And he's clearly told us, not only did he start it, but he made it obvious. It's right there in front of your face. He's right there in your conscience to begin with. He's right there all over. And you make a choice. Are you going to walk in darkness, or are you going to walk in his light? And we already read how, in the last couple of weeks, that men have basically chosen darkness because we want our comfort zone. I like that. It's fun, or it's irresponsible. Some things we like just because I don't have to do this. We like flexibility because in that rigidness, I got to do what I'm told. I got to keep the 10 Commandments. I don't want to do that. I got to be at church on Sundays. I got to do this. I got to do that. I mean, how many times have we been asked over the years, well, if I started going to church, am I going to have to give up this? Am I going to have to quit that? How about what you're going to gain when you have a relationship with Jesus Christ? People don't ask that. Well, other than, well, I get to go to heaven, and in the meantime, can I do what I want? I remember as a kid talking with one of my friends, and he said, I don't know about this church stuff, because, we were in church all the time. And he said, I get it, but he said, I get to cuss all I want. And even as junior high kids, he's already drinking a little bit and smoking cigarettes. And he's like, I smoke all I want. I can't maybe drink all I want, but all I can get away with, he's doing stuff. He says, you don't, I get to do that. And I said, I do that too. He said, what do you mean? I said, I cuss all I want. He said, you don't cuss. And I said, that's all I want. I said, I'm doing exactly what I want to do. I smoke all I want. You don't smoke. That's my point. But I'm not sitting here wanting to and saying, oh man, I don't get to do that. I remember as a 16-year-old with another friend, we were sitting, there was an old church up in Maroa. That's where I went to high school that didn't have church anymore, but the building was still there, and it was right on Main Street. So we used to hang out there and sit on the steps. It had the big concrete steps that went up to the front door, and there's nobody in there ever. So it was just a nice place to sit and watch the cars go by and see who's in town and sit and talk. And I remember him saying to me, we're 16 years old, maybe even 15, I don't know. And he said, you don't ever drink alcohol, do you? You don't ever drink beer? I said, no, never have. He said, let me tell you something. Don't you ever start. He said, I don't even know if I can stop now. And we're only 15 or 16 years old. And I thought, how sad that he recognizes that already in his life. Not sure he can quit. And all these adults are out there encouraging their kids to drink it. The wisdom of a 15 or 16-year-old is, it's already about half ruined me. Don't do it. I said, well, I don't plan to. I was drinking all I wanted. I don't want it. I don't want that stuff. God's truth comes into you, and his power and spirit comes into you to change you, and your want to gets changed. It's never a question of, you mean if I came to Jesus, I'm going to have to stop doing all these things that I want to do? No. There's no have to about it. You'll want to if there's a real change. You'll want to do it. I tell people, say, it's not like God's holding a gun to your head and said, now, if you don't stop that, or if you don't start doing this, you're dead. It's just that if you want to go out to the parking lot, you got to go through that door right over there. You don't have to go through that door. Nobody's going to make you, but if you want out there, you need to go through the door. If you want to be like Jesus, which is what you were created to be, if his Holy Spirit is inside of you, that's what he wants for you. And if you want to be like that, then yes, you have to study your Bible. You have to pray. You have to worship. You have to go to church. You have to get involved. It's not I have to. It's that what I want to accomplish requires that. Now, if you want to be a bumbling idiot all your life, then don't ever read anything. Don't learn to read. Don't learn to write. Don't pay any attention. If that's your goal, you can accomplish that. But if you want to be halfway intelligent, if you want to get along in the world, if you want to be able to make a living, if you want to be able to participate in things, you got to learn a few things. It's not like, well, I have to learn to read. I remember the story of the little kid, his first day of school, and he went to school, and he comes home from school, and it's a brand new experience to him. And Mom says, so, how was it today? Did you do all right? Did you learn some stuff? And he goes, yeah, but I guess I didn't learn enough. She goes, what do you mean? She goes, I got to go back tomorrow. I got to go again. What's the deal on that? That's kind of the way we treat God sometimes. Did you learn anything this week? Not enough, I guess, because I'm going to have to read my Bible again next week. You don't get it all. It's a lifetime. It's a relationship. The truth of God is, first of all, it's given by God. And then secondly, it's for a purpose. It isn't so that I can be smart. That's not why I read the Bible. I read the Bible to learn about him because it's about him. Not just the Bible, life's about him. I think we've somehow, and I think the devil's behind this. I think that we in Christianity, that we in Baptist churches have so watered down what it's all about that we've made it about get saved so you can go to heaven. That's not even close. Not even close to what it's about. The Bible's very clear that my purpose in life is to bring honor and glory to the Heavenly Father. That's what it's about. Well, how could that be? If I could be like Jesus, I would, because what did the Father say when Jesus was baptized? This is my Son in whom I'm well pleased. If I could be like Jesus, I would please God, the Father. So my goal is to be like Jesus, and after all, that's all over the Bible. It says it. Romans 8:28 says we know God takes all things and works them together to make things good for those who love him and are called according to his purpose. And we stop right there. Wait a minute. Called according to what purpose? We just stop right there because that verse is telling me everything's going to work out all right. And I like that. That's my comfort zone, even knowing that in my troubles, yeah, God's going to make something good out of it. But what is the purpose? It's the next verse. That we might be conformed to the image of his dear Son. My purpose in life is to be like Jesus so I can please the Father. That's God's truth. So I've got to figure out how to be like Jesus. Now, I got a whole series on pleasing God and how to do that and how God's made it work. But my point is, God has the truth because he is the truth, and he's given us that truth. And we're to take that and glorify God with it. And when we do that, Jesus said, when we shine this light out of us, God will get the glory and some will turn to him. What kind of truth is that? Well, it's a growth truth. It's not a growing truth. The truth doesn't grow. It's there. It's God. And he's even put it down in words for us so we can even just read it and understand it. But it is about growth. And so we need to understand that. And first thing about it is that it's trustworthy, so that you would be able to take this truth and that you could, it's worth trusting. Well, the truth is that it's God's truth, and he's put it down in a book called the Bible. And you can trust both. You can trust God and you can trust the Bible. And that comes from a lot of things. Some of it is, for you younger ones, it's from a lifelong journey with the Bible. And I've messed it up plenty, but it's never been the Bible's fault. It's always been mine. You can trust it. Oh, but what about if I read this and I read that and it doesn't quite jive? It doesn't seem to. The problem's just in our understanding of it. I mean, here's what makes sense to me, and it always has. If there's a God like the Bible describes, if there's that kind of God who knows everything, can do everything, he spoke the worlds into existence, there's that kind of God out there, doesn't it make perfectly good sense that he's smart enough to write a book? That he could write a book, that he could inspire men to write it down and it be the truth? That it not have problems in it? That if there's a problem, it's going to be on my part of the understanding? Now, we've all listened to radios and watched television, and even with all the improvements we've had over all the years, we still get static interference. We still get weather problems, and it gets snowy, or now it gets digitalized or something, and all of a sudden all the pixels get out of whack until it focuses back in there, and it gets frustrating and all that. The problem's not with the waves that are out there. The problem's on the receiving end. We're not matching it up. We're not actually changing the stuff. It's on the receiver. You can turn the dials or whatever, but if the receiver's, and if the battery's dead, nothing's working. If it's not plugged in, your TV's not showing anything if it's not plugged in. I don't care. It just can't happen. The problem's not with the sender. It's with the receiver. So if you're reading the Bible and you're just struggling to find the truth there and make things work out right, the problem's not with God. It's not with the Bible. It's with the receiver. There's something we don't know. Some things we're just not going to know till we go to heaven. We couldn't handle it. That line from the movie, you can't handle the truth. Our minds just don't get it. I learned that as an adult. When I was a kid growing up, every now and then, with an order from mom or dad, the final thing was, because I would, why? Or why not? Why not? Because I said so. That's what Dad would say, because I said so. I never liked that growing up. As a teenager, I liked it less. Give me a good reason. That is a good reason. I'm like, I don't like that. And I just knew then, someday I'm going to get married and I'm going to have kids, and I'm not going to use that because it doesn't make sense. So I grew up and I got married and we had a son, and he's just a little kid. He's 3 or 4 or 5. I don't know how old he was when I got this revelation. But don't do that, Josh. Why? And I would explain it to him as a good father should. I said, do you understand that? Nope. Why not? Because he's 5. He's 4. He's 3. He's 16. Whatever. You don't get it. You know that they have discovered that until you're about 30, your brain's not completely done yet. I agree with that. I don't know all the science behind it, but that explains why I was like I was at 16 or 20 or 25. You just don't know. Some of it you have to even learn by experience, and you can't experience that till you're about 25 or 30. In fact, I used to always tell the girls when I was in the youth ministry and I'm working with all these teenage girls, I said, you need to understand this. Guys are worthless till they're at least 30, maybe 35. So you're best just stay away from them. Just leave them alone completely. And they look at you like, that's dumb. I'm thinking, no, that's good advice. You'd be better. And if you had a daughter, put her in a cage till she's about 30 or something. Leave those guys out there. Leave them alone. Some things you just don't know. And we can't possibly imagine the things of God. You just read it to us. You just read it for our opening worship in Isaiah where he said, my thoughts are way above your thoughts. Farther than the heaven is away from the earth are my thoughts and your thoughts. My ways are so much bigger than your ways that if he told us and got all done and then said, do you get it? We'd have to say, yeah, nope. Just like my little boy did. No, I don't get it. And so I would explain it a better way. Now do you get it? No. How about this? Because I said so. He got that. He didn't like it any more than I did, but he understood, well, it's Dad. I got to obey Dad. Why can't we do that with God? The greatest father ever who says, I can't explain it to you because you're not smart enough. It would mess you up. It would hurt things. And I don't want to hurt you, so I just got to hold it back from you because you wouldn't get it. It would fry your brain. It's just like you couldn't see God. Moses said, I want to see you, God. And he goes, you can't. It'll kill you. What good would that do? So I'll just pass by and you can just kind of see the backside of me and you'll see a little bit of my glory, but I can't let you just look at me because nobody looks at God's face and lives. See, the Spirit doesn't have a face, even the essence of that. And so there are things way above us that he just has to say, it's true, accept it, and everything will work. And that's what the world doesn't want to do. And sadly, sometimes we as Christians who know better don't want to do it either because we think we've got a better handle. Or I'm comfortable this way. And to go with your truth gets me out of my comfort zone. But it's God's truth and it's a growth truth. And I'm just here to say that you can trust God and you can trust this book to be God's. And I don't care what the world is telling us. They've never disproven this book. They've never overthrown this book. They've never caught it in a lie. They've never really even caught it in anything that's really confusing when you take the time to dig it out and understand it within its context and culture. Context is major with understanding the Bible. I know I've pulled a few verses here, but I can show you the context and I can show you that they're just making the points here that are all over this book. And so for 2,000 years, it has held sway and it's done its job and they can try all they want and people like to go on there and dismiss this and dismiss that on the internet and on social media and all that. And they're just perpetuating the lies. They're just going with what they've heard and what's in their own comfort zone. I saw one the other day and I thought, man, you're just too far gone. I'm not even going to discuss it with you. Somebody was talking about God and talking about the Bible and some guy popped in there. And he said, imagine a God who's so powerful that he only exists in a book. And I thought, what an idiot. I'm not even going to respond to that. You can't fight an unarmed man in a battle of wits. He doesn't have any idea what he just said. He only exists in a book. And I'm thinking, what about a God who's so smart that he could give you a book and reveal himself? And I'm thinking, with 2,000 years of Christianity and 6,000 years of mankind and all the confrontations and all the relationships they've had with God, and he boils it down to, no, it's only existed in a book. It's just because you got a book that says there's a God and all of you have believed that. And I'm thinking, people believed before the book. People were experiencing God before he ever put it down in a book. Wake up, man. No, he wants to live his life his own way and in his ignorance, but he will die in that if he doesn't change. I'm saying you can trust it. So there's your truth. And it doesn't change, but it does change you. And that's where we get a little wonky here. That's where we kind of go off the deep end because we don't really want to be changed. That's why people don't want to read the Bible. Because it's going to challenge us and change us. And we don't want it. It's just like that kid from my junior high days. He's like, I'm not sure I'm ready to be like you. Well, it's not about being like me, but it's being about like Jesus, and Jesus doesn't approve of all this kind of living for selfish reasons. But he wasn't sure, even at that age, that he wanted to give up those things. He at least understood this. If I go your way, which is Bible way, and therefore church way, and whatever, it's going to change me. At least he got that part right. People need to understand that. Christians need to understand that. People in church need to understand that. It's a growth process. And God's Word will change us. His Holy Spirit will change us. And if He's not telling you to change anything, something's seriously wrong. Because either you're just like God now, or you're not listening. Well, I think, in all honesty, we've all got to say, I'm not there yet. The Apostle Paul, one of the greatest Christians ever, said, I haven't attained it yet. But I'm going to forget what's behind, and I'm going to press forward for the mark of the prize of the high calling. A lot of people have reduced that to he's pressing on toward heaven. Can't be true. He'd already attained heaven. You say, well, wait a minute, he was still walking on earth. Yeah, but heaven's a guaranteed for a Christian. And he told us that. He taught us that. He couldn't have been talking about going to heaven because he said, I'm not there yet, and I'm still trying. I'm still trying to reach for that. No, he's talking about the high calling, the purpose I just told you in Romans 8:29 that says that we would be conformed to be like Jesus. And that's why he wrote in Romans 12 that we are to present ourselves as a living sacrifice and let God transform the way that we think so that we could bring honor and glory to him. That's why he told us in Philippians chapter 2, have the same mind and attitude of Jesus Christ, because that's what you're supposed to be like. And even on my way to heaven for the past 62 years, I still haven't attained that yet. I've got heaven guaranteed because of the work of God in my life, because the Holy Spirit keeps me saved. But I'm not like Jesus yet, so there's still more work to do. And the truth will change me if I let God do his work. It'll change me if I don't, because I'm already in conflict with God. So it will change me. It is a growth truth, and it should be a glaring truth. A couple of quick points and then we'll close. It should be obvious. It should be obvious that our lives are different than their lives. It was when I was a kid. It was when I was a teenager. I don't know if it is now or not. In some ways it has to be. If they're paying any attention at all, they saw me leave for church this morning. They've seen me every Sunday go to church a couple of times, and if they paid attention during the week, they'd know we're going somewhere on Wednesday nights. Or if they talk to me for a while, they'll have to figure out, this guy doesn't cuss. Wonder why that is. He's not lit up a cigarette yet. Wonder why he doesn't smoke. I never seen him with a beer in his hand. I've never seen him start fights. I'm not bragging, I'm just saying there's a difference. The Bible says to come out from among them and be ye separate. It says to do it in love, but we're to be different. We're to live a life so that when they need something that we've got, they'll see that we've got it. If they look at the church and if they look at the Christians and say, well, they're no different than we are, then what's going to bring them to Jesus? But if they see that we're different, if they can see at a funeral that we're not all beat up about it, if they could have come to my mom's funeral and had me preach to them and talk about how we're glad she's in heaven. She's not suffering anymore. She gave her life to Jesus when she was young, and now she's reaping the rewards of that. So why in the world would we be sad about that? They would understand if they could see us in the hospital bed and getting ready for surgeries or whatever that we might not come out of and say, you know what? I know right before they wheeled me in for heart surgery, my wife was there and my kids, and I said, well, I'll see you on the other side. And my wife says, well, that doesn't sound very encouraging. And I said, either way, either on the other side of surgery when I come out of it or on the other side of life when you come join me. And it doesn't matter to me which one it is because it's okay. How do you do that? Because I have my hope in Jesus Christ. And so I'm not worried about that stuff. And sometimes we Christians get in trouble from the world because they think we don't care. My family's dying and you don't seem to care. She's a professed Christian. She's going to heaven. He loves the Lord and now he's going to go be with him. Well, I care about that. I heard a guy say one time, we spend more time as Christians trying to pray old people out of heaven because we want to keep them here. Oh, make them better, God. We don't want them to die. My dad's 95. Ask him if he's ready to go. He gets sick again. I'm not going to pray make him well unless you got something else for him to do. He said we spend more time trying to keep people out of heaven that are old than we pray over the 8 and 9 and 10-year-olds that need to get saved. Think about it. What's your prayer list like at church? Get everybody that's sick well. Let me tell you something. If I get sick enough that it looks like maybe I'm going to go, just pray that God takes me on. I'm ready to go. I'm not going to hustle it up because that's his business. I want to do what I need to do while I'm here. But they ought to notice that we're interested in godly things and we have different interests than they do. We live differently than they do. Not completely. We're still here in the world. But we need to say it and show it. Because you see, they see you go to church. And you say, well, there you go. I'm living my life out in front of them. They see it. They see that I'm going to church. So they know that. Why do you go to church? They don't know that. Most of them have the mindset that you go to church because maybe that's going to please God if there is one, and then he'll let you into heaven. Because most of the world has some kind of works mindset that you have to do this and this and this and this, and then maybe you'll get to heaven. So when you ask them, are they going to heaven? Well, I hope so. If there is one, I sure would like to go. And I'm trying to be good. You ask somebody that if they died today, would they go to heaven? Most of them would say, oh, I don't know, I hope so. You say, well, why should God let you in? And if their answer is anything but the saving work of Jesus Christ, now I don't mean those words, but they've said it. I'm trusting Jesus. I gave my heart to Jesus. I gave my life to Jesus. I'm confessed my sin. If it isn't about Jesus, if it's, well, I've tried to be good, I've been in church, or I've tried to be a good neighbor, I've been a good husband, I've been a good wife, whatever it is, none of that will get you to heaven. And it gives me a pretty good idea that they're probably not going yet because they're trusting in whatever they've been doing. It is Jesus alone. And if their answer doesn't say that in some way, you need to deal with them because it's an obvious truth. Our life should be that obvious as well. But know this, and that's what we'll close with. If you live an obvious life for Jesus, that will also be an opposition to the world. They don't like Jesus. They don't mind God too much. They're not crazy about him, but they'll talk to you about God. Because they might be thinking about Allah, or they might be thinking about some Buddha, or they might be thinking about a tree or a sun or whatever God they've got. And they just don't worry about that. But when you narrow it down and say Jesus Christ, that's a definable term. That's a definable person. That's somebody they actually know about from history and from this book. And they don't want that because that is an obvious truth that would cause change in their life and turn their world upside down, and they don't want that. And so they will argue with you about Jesus Christ or just turn you off and leave. About God, they'll talk, but not about Jesus. The world hates Jesus. He told us that, so it should be no surprise. And then he said, don't be surprised if they hate you, because it's not really you they hate, it's me. The only way that's going to come out true is if I'm living like Jesus. They don't hate me if I don't live like Jesus. It's not a big deal. If I'm no different than they are, they wouldn't hate me. Oh, yeah, you're just one of us. But if I'm like Jesus, that draws a line in the sand. But it's the truth. And it's the line that has to be drawn. And you have to decide, and I had to decide, and the world needs to decide, am I going to step on Jesus' side of that line, or am I going to go with the world on that side of the line? shining truth. God has shined the truth to us, and then he says, now you shine it to them. And one of two things, either they'll accept or they'll reject, but at least they'll be rejecting the truth. The truth is that God made you and he made me for his purposes and pleasure. And when we allow him to put his Holy Spirit inside of us, when we trust Jesus Christ as our Lord and Savior, the very essence of God comes into our life to change us, to transform us, to be like Jesus. And as we do that, we glorify God. Others can see that and make the choice, but at least we're doing what we're supposed to be doing. We are fulfilling our very purpose when we walk in the light as he is in the light. Not our own version of it, his version of it. God is the truth, and the Bible is the truth about him. And it says, trust me and follow me. Shine your light. Would you stand with me for prayer? Give you an opportunity to come and kneel at the altar and pray it out. Maybe there's some things in your life that you already knew needed to be changed, but you didn't think about it in terms of, but it's the truth. It's God's truth. I ought to be like this. I ought to be like Jesus. Maybe you ought to just come pray about that as we sing a song and commit this time to him. What shall we sing?